This is Christina from the Mahara project with the second screencast on SmartEvidence. While the first one gave a brief overview of what SmartEvidence is and how you can work with it, in this one we are also going to take a look at how you can actually set up your evidence standard file, because now we have the release candidate for Mahara 16.10 available, so that you can give that new functionality a go yourself. And so we just wanted to let you know kind of how you can do that, and give you also the sample files attempt so you can simply adopt them instead of having to start from scratch. But before we take a look at the file, just a short recap, especially also because the audio is much better this time, on what SmartEvidence is and what it looks like. So here we have one of the built-in evidence or competency standards that Mahara is going to ship with for later in October, namely the practicing teacher criteria from Aotearoa, New Zealand. And once you have set up a collection with a SmartEvidence file, which you can very easily do by going to your collections, once an institution has enabled that feature, and then there you see the SmartEvidence framework that is available to you within that institution. In this case, we are using the practicing teacher criteria. And then once these have been attached to the collection, the first page of the collection becomes this matrix, which you can't change because the matrix is provided by the institution. But you can very easily interact with it. And what you see in this matrix is, for one, let me back up again, a short description of the standard that has been provided by your institution. And then you see all the pages that are part of this collection that you're currently viewing. So any page also that you add to the collection will be added to that matrix file. And you can associate it with the standards. Now, if you have more than the 5 pages that kind of do go on the matrix file per default, you can use the next and previous buttons to navigate to the remaining pages and then see whether they've already been associated with a standard. Now, down the vertical axis, you see the standards themselves, namely kind of the top standard. You get a description of the standard, so that the title and also short description if one is available. And then you see the individual standards. And as you can see, you can format them with simple HTML in the description area, so that it retains as much as possible from of the formatting that you have available on paper normally. And so you can go through and always see also which standard you're actually looking at, because in order to keep the matrix file relatively short, we are only displaying the short name here. The second column is a count of how many standards you have already successfully completed. So in this case, we have one here for standard 5, and that is due to the criterion and for the leadership aspirations, which the evidence already meets, and therefore we have a 1 here. But because the evidence provided in Teaching Year 10 in 2016 does not yet meet the criteria, it does not count towards the final count. And you also see a number of different icons on this page, namely the gray one is an indicator that you can add add an annotation to it, namely simply by clicking it, and then you have an annotation field available here in which you can provide your annotation. You can allow feedback, and per default this is always the case because you do want to invite people to give feedback on your annotation, and therefore also on the standard. Then you can also see the standard, and because you clicked on a specific standard within the matrix, it is already pre-selected, and you can double check that it's the one that you want because the description is given below. When you add an annotation via the matrix, you explicitly choose a standard, and that's why you cannot change it in the drop-down menu. However, when you add an annotation via the page directly, then you can choose the standard and also make changes there if necessary before you actually submit it. Once you save your annotation, the icon changes to that blue circle, which means that it is ready for assessment. And you can have as many circles or as many evidences associated with your standards for one page as you wish. So there's no limit that one page can only meet one standard. Now, when we are switching to the assessor view, so let's just go here into the page of Paula, refresh the page. Because I'm now an assessor, and that means I can view her page. She has given me access to it, and I also see that the icons have changed, and because I can't give feedback or can't add an annotation myself, I do not see the round icons, and therefore I cannot change anything. But what I can now do is actually look at the page itself, of course, to study the evidence, and then either give feedback directly on the annotation on the page, or I can return to this map here and click the annotation for the standard that I want to take a look at, and then place feedback here. And then choose whether I want to whether I think it already meets the standard or not. And once I've placed my feedback, I can also save the assessment, and then the icon changes. Or once I'm completely happy with what she had done, I can change the criterion to the assessment to meet the criterion, and then save that, and the icon then becomes the green one. And that is essentially how you work with an evidence map. Now, in order to actually set up such a map, you cannot currently do that on the administrator interface. What you would need to do is use one of our sample files, which you can download from the wiki, from the specifications document, and I'll put the link to that wiki page into the description, where we have described the initial functionality of SmartEvidence, and all the way at the bottom you can download the sample matrix files in a zip file and open them in a simple text editor. And then you'll see, when you open them, see something like this. So it is just a very simple text file. It is in the Json format, and what it does is it describes how the matrix file should be set up and who also will have access to the evidence framework. So let me briefly walk you through so that you have an idea of what you can change and how these changes will influence your matrix. Since it's a JSON file, structure and also all commas and so on are very important, and therefore be careful with what you copy or what you delete and when you add things. But of course, Mahara will also tell you when the formatting is not yet correct so that you can correct it. Okay, so at the top, we just have the framework, and on line 2 it says institution. If you want your evidence map to be available, or your SmartEvidence competency framework to be available to all institutions on your entire Mahara instance, then you can say all, because that means anybody on the site for whom SmartEvidence is enabled on the institution level can use it. If you only want to make it available to one institution, then you can change that to the short name of the institution, which a site administrator can find out. Let's just change it back to all. And the next line gives the name. That's practicing teacher criteria. In this case, I want to have it for self-assessment, so I added self-assessment. And that is the name. That then also appears as the title of the page for your SmartEvidence matrix page. So in this case, I'm setting up the practicing teacher criteria, but for self-assessment, so that a teacher can do the assessment themselves. Then we have a description, and that description is the one that is shown at the top of the page. And you can use simple HTML to format that description. So here I've put in paragraph break, or a paragraph and then another paragraph, and also the source. What I'll change with the source here is that I actually make it a link, and that means that everything is just a bit shorter. So let me just copy that over source. So just make small change here. And what you have to be careful about is, because it's a JSON file and quotation marks and so on are actually structural elements, is that if you have quotation marks also in your description, you need to escape them. And that's easily done by putting a backslash before the element that you want to escape. And in this case, I need to escape the URL, the quotation marks around the URL in my HTML code, because otherwise the file will not pass. So once I've done that, I'm done with my description, and then we have the line of the self-assessment. And there it's a binary value, either true or false. In this case, because I want to use it for self-assessment, I set it to true. Then the next few lines are for the evidence statuses. So that's the 3 statuses that we've seen earlier, or the one, the blue circle ready for assessment. And these are the tooltips, or the alternative text when you hover over the elements. That it's ready for assessment, meets the criterion, doesn't meet the criterion, or here partially meets the criterion. So I can change those to say it doesn't meet the standard and meets the standard. And that's also an easy way for you to actually set up your competency framework in another language, because you can use any language with that, and that's why we have the evidence statuses in the file, so that you actually are not bound to English but can use other languages in here as well. So you could set up one competency framework in English, another one in French, and then in our case one also in Mahara, for example. And then you have your actual standards. So the standards always begin with the top standard, and that is the one that is displayed all the way at the top, where you cannot have any selections, and that's the standard itself is the one that has the kind of heading level. And then you have the substandards in this case below, and you can have at the moment can have at least 2 levels. Right now we are going to look at a framework though only with this 1 sub level rather than 2 to make it a bit easier. So we have a short name and then a regular name. Oftentimes these are the same. And then you can also have a description. And that is the description that is displayed when you hover over the text, or on mobile eventually when you click on the text. Priority, you give that the priority in the order in which you want the standards to appear. Normally you would start your file with the priority 1 and go down, but that way you wouldn't, if you want to change the priorities at some point, you don't have to change the order in the file necessarily. And then come the standard elements. Again, very similar to what the standard looks like. You have a short name, a name and a description. And these are the elements that are also displayed in the matrix file, namely your short name is displayed directly here. And then you have the long name, so the actual name of the standard displayed in the overlay, and also the description right there. And we decided to go with the short name in the matrix file so as not to make it overloaded so much, but kind of keep it simple. And a lot of people oftentimes just work with the short names, and that can be numbers, also a couple of words, for example. Then again we have the priority, and again if you wanted to change your standards around but not really move them in the JSON file, then you can just change the priorities there. And for the substandards or standard elements, we have the parent level. In this case, in the sample files, it is set to false because there aren't any further substandards to the ones here. But if you wanted to have, say, a 3rd level for standards, then you could put a true here, and the following standards would be sub-elements of the standard here. And so every standard element is described by this block of text. So if you want to add more or remove some, then you just have to make sure that you take everything from the curly brackets, everything within the curly brackets, and then delete that or copy that for that matter. The comma is very important if you have any follow-on substandards at the same level or at a sub level, just so that the JSON file knows there's more coming. And that's pretty much it for it. So in this case, as you can see, we have 1 standard element, a second one, 3rd, 4th, and so on. And they all contain a short name, and then the description. And the description contains also HTML. And again, I'm escaping certain HTML elements so that the JSON file does not complain. Now, if I did make a mistake in my JSON file, for example, left out a comma, which is very easy to do, I can validate it before adding it to Mahara. There's a nice and simple tool available that is called the JSON formatter and validator, and all you have to do there is copy a JSON file in and click the process button. I don't change any of the other settings on it, and so what it tells me here is that it's expecting a comma or something else, and then when I simply click on the error, I can go to it and it tells me directly the place where things are wrong. And so I can see, oh yes, right here somewhere I forgot to add my element, and So in this case, because I'm having the another element following, I need to set the comma. So I can go back in my file, put the comma there, and also in this case I actually saw that it said parent true, so I need to change that to false, and copy that now back into the validator. And now it tells me at least that JSON is correct. It doesn't really validate your content and if the matrix is set up correctly, but at least I know that JSON is correct. I can save my file, and now it's ready to be uploaded. Just find the right page to my Mahara instance. So you can upload a matrix file as a site administrator when you go to the administration area, then extensions and SmartEvidence. On that page, you see all the evidence frameworks that have already been installed on the instance and how many times they have been used, and whether they are for self-assessment or not, and also whether they are active. When you set a standard to inactive, any collection that has it in use can still continue using it, but no new learner can start working with that framework. So that is really nice when a standard is being updated, but you still want to keep the existing portfolios using that standard to complete their assessment, but no new person should be able to use it. And if a standard hasn't been used, you can also simply delete it. Now, to add my framework, I click the Add Framework button, browse, and then I can simply find my framework file. In this case, I put it into the Mahara code, but that's actually not really necessary because the file can just be anywhere. It does not need to be sitting in the code, so you can simply upload it from your computer. Open the file and click Save, and then it has been accepted. So now I can just double check which institution has or which institution allows SmartEvidence. In order to do so, I go to institutions, and because I'm site admin, I might be under no institution. So you can allow SmartEvidence for no institution, which is the case here, and also for university, for example. And there we have SmartEvidence allowed as well. So I'm all good as site administrator also to use SmartEvidence because I'm a member also of the institution university. So I go back, return to site, go to my portfolio, and see if that new framework is available to me. And there it is. So I can choose the self-assessment framework. And you can change the framework that you want to use on a collection until you have added annotations to the collection. Before then, you're free to change it around if need be. So now we see that we have the title, the new title, self-assessment. The source is linked, and I have my framework right here, and can then select where I want to add the annotation and work with that. Or alternatively, as mentioned earlier, I can go to the page itself and then add an annotation and decide which standard I want to meet. So let's choose one of them. You see that the description is being displayed so that I can make sure that I'm writing the annotation for the proper standard. Click Save. Now my annotation is displayed. Go to Display Page. We have it right there. And when I go back to the matrix page, I also see that I now have the blue circle and my evidence is ready for assessment. And since this is self-assessment, I have the chance to do the assessment myself. And you see the language string has changed as well from does not meet the criteria to does not meet the standard. Save that and I'm done. And that's how you work with SmartEvidence, using it as well as setting it up. Just to briefly recap, if you want to set up your own evidence framework, download one of the standard files that we provide as examples and adapt it to your needs. Change the text, change the descriptions, and so on. You can then take it through the JSON formatter just to make sure that there are no elements missing. And as site administrator, then upload it to your Mahara page or to your Mahara site and make it available to the institutions that you want to use it with. And also make sure that the institutions have SmartEvidence allowed in their institution settings all the way at the bottom. And then you are ready to add the SmartEvidence competency framework to one of your collections or even to more of them and explore further from there. Now, if you do not have a Mahara test instance available where you can try this out, you can use, for the time being of the release candidate, you can use our master.dev.mahara.org site for it. You can simply register on the site, and if you want to have a framework uploaded, please simply email it to me or email it to info@mahara.org so we can upload it, and also let us know what your username on master.dev.mahara.org is so that we can give you staff permissions so you can also assess other people's frameworks if you don't have a self-assessment framework. So we hope you like the existing functionality, or the not existing yet completely, but the functionalities that we are going to release later in October 2016 for Mahara 16.10, and get the chance to test the frameworks out either on your own site or on master.dev, so that you can also give us feedback if things aren't working as required, or if you have any ideas of what could be changed or what you'd like to see in the future. This is the first implementation of SmartEvidence, so because it is a big feature, it is still experimental, so there might be some things that are a bit clunky or that we can certainly change in the future, but we wanted to make it available for you so that you can give it a go, trial it, see how it can work with your students, with your staff, and how it already works with the functionality that you'll have available. So thank you for giving it a go, and we hope to hear from you.